INTPs can really struggle with productivity. I'm an INTP myself. I've struggled with productivity for 7, 8, 9, 10 years throughout high school, throughout university or college, throughout my first years in working a job, and it's just a nuisance and I don't need to explain it to you. I am currently really diving into productivity, not just like the general advice, but specifically for INTPs. And I simply want to share those results with you. Now, that means that basically every single week, I'm going to try implementing a new thing and I'm going to see how it works. And that might change over time, but for now, that is the plan. And so this week I introduced step number 1 for me to getting more productive. But before that, there's step number 0, which I think only pertains to me, but might also be useful for you. And that is tracking, right? If I want to tell you, I did this and I got twice as productive, I need to have some sort of data, some sort of metric in which I actually created twice the output. So whether that is the amount of words I have written or the amount of, comments that I made, or whatever it is, whatever metric you might have, I might have, you need to track it if you really want to just objectively look at your results. Now, the amount of words written, let's say, isn't the only important thing. Sure, there's also quality, etc. And you can't put everything into a measurable piece of data. But just as a guideline, I'm going to be able to have concrete data to show you, as well as my own experiences with how things felt. So step 0 is tracking, right? I might make some sort of template for you guys. I will share it with you when I have it, but some sort of easy to fill in spreadsheet where you just put in like this week, I put in this amount of work, and the other week I did something different and I got more work or I did less work, whatever. You get the idea. That's also an interesting thing. I don't use daily measurements. I use it by week. Why? INTPs can be quite inconsistent. You have your sporadic flows of inspiration and motivation, and then you might not at all be interested in whatever work you are trying to do. So not on a day-to-day basis, it's going to be on a weekly basis. So I work with weekly to-do lists as well. That's step number 0. Tracking. Step number 1 for me is simply a very quick morning journal practice where I write down the date, the 29th, which is tomorrow, the 29th of November 2024, and I just go over some things. My goals for this year, 2024, my goals for next year is the first thing I write down. Just because that is like my main guideline, right? So my goals for this year, my goals for next year. And then I say, today is a working day. Because if you only have working days and you fade the line between work and leisure and rest, you're gonna stay stuck in that continuous cycle of I do something every day. And especially when you procrastinate and you don't do things, then you have basically not rested either. Right? Procrastination is not rest. So beating yourself up for not being productive, then being a bit productive the next day, then beating yourself up for not being as productive the day after, there's no rest. So I have working days and I have rest days, and it might only be Sundays, it might only be one Sunday every 2 weeks, whatever it is. But when I have a rest day, I write it down, and that is a rest day. It's just a way of setting your intentions. It's that simple. And of reminding yourself, which is very important because you can sort of lose track of what you're trying to accomplish. I think Nietzsche said, man's greatest form of stupidity is forgetting what he is trying to accomplish. So I remind myself every day. Today I work on my project. Then out of my weekly to-do list, I sort of take a quick look and say, okay, these are things that I want to do today. And I sort of pick 2 or 3 that are must for today. So for today, it's making a video. Like this video is a must for me today. And then there's also things that will be preferred to do as well. So studying some things, creating some slides for my free training, studying. Those are the things that I've written down yesterday. So I write down my goals. You can do it whatever you want. I write it down for this year, which is just a month, but fine. This year and next year. Then I say today I'm going to work. This is what I'm going to work on. And then you could add into that. So what I actually, what came to thought during this morning's journaling practice was, why don't I make it really simple? Just say, what do I want to achieve? Why do I want to achieve it? And how am I gonna do something to push that needle today? So what do I want? I want to grow in YouTube. Why do I want to grow in YouTube? Well, A, I want to help people. B, I want to learn the skill of making good videos, of storytelling, or like proper speaking, articulations, things like that. I want to improve myself. So that is the reasons why I want to grow in YouTube. How do I grow on YouTube? Well, I make this video, right? I comment on basically every single comment that I get on my videos. I learn about YouTube, right? You do things that are gonna get you to that goal that is important to you for some reason. So that's really the simplest thing. So if I were you and I want to do this, this is a perfect example of a habit that takes less than 2 minutes. When a habit is less than 2 minutes, it's quite easy to implement. So you say, what do I want? Why do I want that? And how can I get it? And just doing that every single day is a great way to start. And then afterwards, it depends so much on your situation that I can't just give you advice, oh, you should do this, you should do that. You know all the terms, flow, focus, deep work, Pomodoro, whatever. This is the way to start, and you can build off of that, right? So, for example, you might discover that you're really productive when you don't have breakfast. Because when you don't eat, you have more energy, and when you have energy, you can dive into the things you want to dive into, right? Then that can become a part of this morning practice where you say like, what I want, why do I want it, how do I get it? And you just say like, I need to make a YouTube video, for example. And how do I get it? Well, by not having breakfast or by delaying breakfast. And you can add things into your way of doing productivity, your way of making things, creating things. And this is a great base for that, right? Because it happens to me a lot of times when I want to get productive, I find out this new productive thing, and then the next day I wake up and I just don't remember at all that I was going to do that specific technique of productivity or whatever. And the day goes by, I struggle with productivity. I think, oh, what do I do? And then after like 2 hours of beating myself up for not being productive, I realized that I was going to do a certain thing because I figured that will be helpful, and then you just forgot. So this is going to be a video series. I don't know if this is video number 0, video number 1. I'm tracking my productivity now, the amount of words I've written, the amount of comments I've made. I also measure like my growth. So like, for example, with YouTube, total views that I have gotten, subscribers, things like that. But those are things that you can't really influence. Those are results of your input. So it's mostly measuring your input. So I'm going to measure my input, see how things go, and I'm going to update you guys probably weekly, because every week I will introduce a new thing. So I will talk about in the next video is how it was to do this morning journaling practice, and what I'm going to introduce in the next week, or what I have just introduced. It depends on when I post a video, right? If you have any ideas or suggestions or things you would like me to experiment with to get more productive, things that have helped you, things you have heard about, things you have come up with that you might not be able to implement right now, feel free to just comment it below. There's so many different techniques, but most don't really work for INTPs, because when it comes to action, we are sort of like the odd one out, perhaps with other personality types as well, but right, your mind wanders, you see so many possibilities that you don't know where to start. You realize that if you want to make the perfect chapter 2, you first need to have the perfect chapter 1, but in order to have the perfect chapter 1, you kind of need to know all of that, so then you know the drill. I don't need to explain you how productivity can be a struggle for us, but there are always interesting things to try out and to see how they work. That was today. Thank you for listening, and have a good night.